Throughout history, the role of a president or any world leader has never been devoid of controversy. While some may have been admired for their competence and leadership, others have been regarded as well-meaning but ineffective, or even despised for their cruel and tyrannical nature. In this episode, we'll focus on one of America's most controversial figures, President Andrew Jackson. By the end, you may find yourself questioning whether his legacy reflects heroism or corruption. Andrew Jackson was a man whose actions sparked admiration and disdain in equal measure, both during his lifetime and today. Whether you view him as a national hero or a deeply flawed leader, his impact on the United States is undeniable. We will explore his rise to power, his military feats, and the myriad controversies that have left lasting stains on his reputation, including actions that would be considered brutal, even by today's standards. Who was Andrew Jackson? Andrew Jackson was born into poverty on March 15, 1767, in Waxhaws, South Carolina. His early life was marked by hardship, loss, and the chaotic backdrop of the American Revolution. Jackson lost his mother and two brothers during the war, leaving him an orphan by the age of 14. His deep-seated hatred for the British began when he was taken prisoner at 13 and wounded by a British officer for refusing to shine the officer's boots, a story that would fuel his lifelong enmity toward Britain. Despite lacking formal education, Jackson was self-taught and, after the Revolution, managed to study law. By 1787, he was admitted to the bar in North Carolina and later became the prosecuting attorney for the Western District of North Carolina, which would eventually become the state of Tennessee. His early legal career laid the groundwork for his future political endeavors. Jackson's rise to political power. Jackson's political career began when he was elected the first U.S. representative from Tennessee in 1796. Although he served only one term and declined to run again, he continued to hold various prominent positions. In 1802, he was elected Major General of the Tennessee Militia, a role that would eventually lead to his most celebrated achievements as a military commander during the War of 1812. The War of 1812 allowed Jackson to showcase his military prowess, particularly in the Battle of Horseshoe Bend in Alabama, where he led a campaign that decisively crushed the Creek Indians, who were aligned with the British. However, his most famous victory came at the Battle of New Orleans in 1815, where his defense of the city against the British made him a national hero. Ironically, the war had officially ended 2 weeks earlier, with the signing of the Treaty of Ghent, but news of the treaty had not yet reached the battlefield. Jackson's success on the battlefield paved the way for his political ascent, leading to his eventual election as the 7th President of the United States in 1828. However, his presidency would be mired in controversies that would haunt his legacy. Major controversies. The Indian Removal Act. One of the darkest chapters in Andrew Jackson's presidency was his role in the forced removal of Native American tribes from their ancestral lands, culminating in the infamous Trail of Tears. The Indian Removal Act, signed into law in 1830, was a policy driven by Jackson's desire to open up land for American settlers, particularly in the southeastern United States. Despite the fact that the Cherokee had legal title to their land and the Supreme Court had ruled in their favor, Jackson made little effort to enforce the court's decision, allowing the state of Georgia to continue its brutal enforcement of jurisdiction over Cherokee territory. Jackson's justification for the removal policy was framed in paternalistic terms. He believed he was acting in the best interest of Native Americans by relocating them to land west of the Mississippi River, away from encroaching white settlers. However, the reality was far more sinister. The Cherokee were forcibly removed from their homes, and over 15,000 were marched westward, with thousands dying along the way from disease, starvation, and exposure. This tragedy, now known as the Trail of Tears, remains one of the most grievous human rights abuses in U.S. history. Jackson and the Bank War. Another contentious aspect of Jackson's presidency was his war against the Second Bank of the United States. Jackson believed that the bank wielded too much power over the national economy and was a tool of the elite who used it to manipulate financial policies in their favor. In 1832, when Congress passed a bill to recharter the bank, Jackson vetoed it, sparking a major political conflict. Jackson's opposition to the bank led to its eventual demise in 1836. His veto was seen as a populist move, reflecting his distrust of centralized financial power, but it also led to economic instability. Jackson's decision to require that all purchases of federal land be made in gold or silver, the specie circular, caused a sharp contraction in credit, contributing to the Panic of 1837, one of the worst economic crises of the era. Slavery and Jackson's personal wealth. As a slave owner, Jackson was deeply invested in preserving the institution of slavery. His personal wealth was tied to his plantation, the Hermitage in Tennessee, where he owned more than 150 slaves. Jackson was known for his harsh treatment of enslaved people, demanding strict obedience and punishment for any perceived disobedience. In one instance, Jackson placed an advertisement offering a reward for the capture of a runaway slave, and even incentivized physical punishment by offering an additional sum for every lash administered, up to 300 lashes, a punishment that would likely have been fatal. Jackson's staunch defense of slavery extended into his political career. He saw abolitionists as a threat to the Union and was a fierce advocate for the expansion of slavery into new territories. His policies helped lay the groundwork for the future sectional conflicts that would eventually lead to the Civil War. Jackson's presidency. Democracy or tyranny? Andrew Jackson's presidency is often credited with being a turning point in American political history. His election marked the rise of the common man in American politics, as Jackson portrayed himself as a champion of the people against the established elite. His leadership style was assertive and at times authoritarian, earning him the nickname King Andrew I from his critics. He relied heavily on an informal group of advisors, known as the Kitchen Cabinet, and frequently ignored the opinions of his official cabinet when making decisions. Jackson also set precedents that would shape the modern presidency, particularly his use of the presidential veto. He vetoed more bills than all of his predecessors combined, asserting the power of the executive branch in a way that had not been seen before. However, his critics argue that his presidency undermined democratic principles, as he often disregarded constitutional limits in favor of his own vision for the country. Legacy: hero or villain? By the time Andrew Jackson left office in 1837, he had transformed American politics and left an indelible mark on the nation. He was wildly popular among many for his image as a war hero and his tough, no-nonsense leadership style. Yet his legacy is marred by the brutal policies he enacted, particularly those regarding Native Americans, and his unwavering support for slavery. Jackson's influence on the Democratic Party was profound, as he helped to shape its early ideologies. However, the intensity of the political conflicts during his presidency sowed the seeds for future divisions, particularly on issues of slavery and states' rights. His populist appeal and authoritarian tendencies also foreshadowed future struggles between the executive branch and other branches of government. In conclusion, Andrew Jackson was a man of contradictions, a military hero, a champion of the people, and yet a figure of immense cruelty and corruption. His decisions reshaped the presidency and the nation, but they came at a great cost to many, especially Native Americans and enslaved people. As we look back on his life and legacy, the question remains: was Andrew Jackson a product of his time, or was he one of America's most corrupt leaders? Thank you for watching this episode of The History Speaks. If you enjoyed the content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue to produce in-depth historical content. Thanks for watching.